"Read it," Matteo de Luca said, sliding $1 million check across the table. Candle heat touched Nora Vale's cheek, while the old paper beneath her gloved fingers carried a bitter scent of resin, smoke, and something she had not smelled since childhood. Nora Vale, a document conservator hired to inspect a damaged ledger, had just been challenged by Matteo de Luca, the man whose name made attorneys lower their voices, because every expert in the room had failed to identify the script, and he had decided humiliation would be more entertaining than patience. Two men near the private dining room doors shifted their weight. Nobody expected the woman in a plain black dress to answer. Matteo expected less than that. He expected her to look at the check. Instead, Nora looked at the first line of ink. The man who sold Matteo de Luca's name is seated on his left. Nobody laughed. A glass stopped halfway to someone's mouth. Nora lifted her eyes. Matteo was no longer smiling. At his left sat Vittorio de Luca. The auction had begun as a quiet transaction between wealthy people who preferred their purchases unlisted. The ledger arrived sealed inside a climate-controlled case. Nora's job was simple: confirm the paper's age, identify restoration damage, and judge whether the binding could survive handling. 3 language specialists had already failed to read it. Nora tried not to react when the case opened. Pineresin, lamp, black, Xlove oil. Her foster father had used the same mixture on old notebooks at their kitchen table. She had not smelled it in 12 years. She had never expected to find it inside a Mafia auction. Matteo tapped one finger beside the check. Again, Nora kept her eyes on the page. The line says what I read. Vittorio gave a short laugh. Convenient. Nora turned the ledger slightly toward the light. Convenient would be pretending this is a normal cipher. Matteo leaned back. And it is not. No. Then what is it? Nora looked at the first line again. The symbols appeared decorative until the eye stopped treating them as letters. Her foster father had called them doors. Some opened left. Some opened right. Some were never meant to open at all. It is directional. Vittorio's smile vanished, meaning Nora pointed without touching. This cluster reads from right to left. The next reverses. That mark changes the sound of the word after it. Not before. One of the specialists frowned. That is not how any documented system works. Nora looked at him. Then, it is fortunate the ink does not care about documentation. Matteo's mouth moved slightly. Not a smile this time. Interest. Vittorio reached for the ledger. Nora closed the protective cover before his fingers touched it. The movement shocked the room more than her translation. Do not. Vittorio stared at her. Excuse me. The binding is unstable. Nora kept her voice level. If you pull from that corner, the spine will separate. Do you know who you are speaking to? A man about to damage a 6-figure object. Matteo laughed once, quietly. Vittorio's face darkened. Nora regretted the sentence, only because attention was becoming dangerous. She had spent years perfecting invisibility, neutral clothes, careful speech, jobs where her name appeared in conservation reports nobody read. Her foster father had taught her early that unusual knowledge made people curious, and curious people eventually wanted ownership. She had believed him. That was why she had never told anyone about the notebooks he used to make her read. Matteo slid the check another inch toward her. You read the line. Nora looked at the amount written in words. I noticed. Then take it. No. Silence returned. Matteo looked down at the check. Then back at her. You understand the number, yes. Most people would confirm twice. Most people were invited to gamble. Nora removed one glove, finger by finger. I was hired to preserve a book. Vittorio scoffed. You expect us to believe you accidentally know this language. Nora felt the old warning move through her body. Her shoulders loosened. Her breathing slowed. Fear always made her quieter. I did not call it a language. Matteo caught the distinction immediately. What would you call it? Nora hesitated. System. Who taught you? Someone who is dead. Vittorio leaned forward. Name. Nora looked at him. No. One of the guards moved. Matteo raised 2 fingers without turning. The guard stopped. Matteo studied Nora for several seconds. You refuse $1 million and then refuse a simple question. The question is simple. The answer is mine. Matteo's gaze dropped to the ledger. Read the second line. Nora did not move. No. Vittorio laughed again. There. She cannot. Nora turned toward Matteo. That is not why. Then why? She pointed to a small, irregular mark near the bottom of the first page. It looked like spilled ink. Because somebody altered this page after it was written. The room changed. Matteo stood. No sudden movement. No raised voice. Still, every person around the table became more careful. Show me. Nora angled the page beneath the lamp. The main text is carbon-based. That mark has a different sheen. Nuva binda. Different drying pattern. Matteo came beside her. Close enough that she could smell cedar and cold air on his coat. What does the mark do? I do not know yet. Guess. Nora looked at him. You did not hire me to guess. His eyes stayed on hers. No. I hired you to tell me when everyone else is pretending certainty. The sentence landed harder than it should have. Nora looked away first. She examined the lower margin. The suspicious mark repeated near the second line. Then again beside a symbol shaped like a broken circle. Her pulse changed. Her foster father used to draw the same broken circle when he wanted her to skip a word and return later. He called it the missing line. Nora's fingers stopped above the page. Matteo noticed. What nothing? That was not nothing. Nora pulled the ledger closer. I need magnification. Matteo nodded toward an assistant. Within seconds, a glass lens appeared. Nora hated how quickly his world obeyed. She hated more that the lens confirmed her fear. Beneath the black mark was a faint, older stroke. Partially erased. Someone had hidden a second instruction inside the first page. Her foster father had taught her that too. Hide, meaning where impatient readers believed damage had occurred. Nora leaned back. This book was not written to be read once. Matteo's face became still. Explain. There is a second layer. Vittorio stood. Enough. Matteo did not look at him. Sit. One word. Vittorio remained standing for half a second, then lowered himself back into the chair. Nora felt the room absorb that. Matteo returned his attention to her. Read what you can. Nora studied the concealed line. The symbols were incomplete, but one word remained clear. Port. Another looked like a family name. Though one stroke was missing. She refused to fill the gap. It mention à port. Vittorio's hand closed around his glass. Nora saw it. So did Matteo. Which port? He asked. The name is damaged. Can you reconstruct it? Maybe. Vittorio spoke too quickly. This is nonsense. The ledger is worthless. Nora turned toward him. You were interested enough to reach for it 30 seconds ago. His eyes hardened. Matteo looked between them. Nora understood the trap she had created for herself. The first line had made her valuable. The second layer had made her dangerous. Matteo picked up the check and folded it once. Nora expected him to tear it. Instead, he placed it inside the ledger case. The offer remains. I already refused. I heard you. Then, why keep it there? Matteo closed the case carefully, avoiding the damaged corner she had warned him about. Because people change their minds. Nora almost smiled. That sounds like a man accustomed to buying better answers. Usually, and when money fails, his gaze held hers. I learn what the person actually wants. The truth of that unsettled her. Nora put her gloves back on. Then learn this. I want the ledger stored flat, humidity controlled, and nobody touching it without me present. Vittorio laughed under his breath. Matteo did not. Agreed. Nora frowned. That easy. You gave me the first useful instruction tonight. The salon emptied slowly after Matteo ended the auction. Nobody argued with the decision. Nora packed her tools while pretending she could still leave like an ordinary contractor. Matteo remained near the window. Vittorio stopped beside him and spoke too quietly for her to hear. Matteo answered with 3 words. Vittorio's shoulders stiffened before he walked out. Nora closed her case. Am I free to go? Matteo turned. Yes. Relief loosened her chest by 1 degree. Then he added, Tomorrow morning. I want you back. That was not part of my contract. We can write another. I am not interested in private employment. Neither am I. Nora lifted her case. That sounds contradictory. Matteo walked toward the ledger. I do not want an employee. I want the only person in this city who read a sentence everyone else called impossible. Nora's grip tightened. You do not know I am the only one. You refused $1 million before asking whether there was more. He looked at her. That tells me you already know this is worth more than money. At the door, Nora stopped. She should leave. She should call the hotel contractor and resign before sunrise. She should forget the resin smell, the broken circle, and the impossible familiarity of the script. Then Matteo spoke behind her. Your first translation named me. Nora looked back. Yes, the second layer frightened you. Her stomach tightened. No, that was your first lie tonight. He did not sound angry. That made it worse. Nora set her case down. Do you want honesty? Always. No. You want answers. Matteo's expression changed slightly. Nora continued. Those are not the same thing. For the first time, he had no immediate reply. She picked up her case again. Tomorrow, 9 a.m, my professional rate, my rules around the document, and I keep a copy of every translation I produce. Matteo's gaze sharpened. You negotiate quickly. You put $1 million on a table. I assumed subtlety was optional. A quiet laugh escaped him. Nora reached the elevator before Matteo called her name. She turned. He stood beside the closed ledger case, with one hand resting on the table. Why did everyone go silent when you read the first line? She asked. Matteo's face lost the last trace of humor. Because the man on my left has been my uncle, Ed Wieser, and second in command for 15 years. Nora looked toward the corridor where Vittorio had disappeared. And you believe the book? I believe. Reactions. Matteo glanced down at the case. Vittorio reacted before you finished the sentence. The elevator doors opened. Nora stepped inside. Matteo spoke again. One more thing. She held the doors. What? The chemical smell on the paper. Her pulse stopped. What about it? I have smelled it before. Nora's hand tightened against the elevator edge, where Matteo's eyes stayed on hers. On a package delivered to my father the week he was killed. At 9 the next morning, Nora found the $1 million check waiting beneath the glass lid of the ledger case. Matteo had moved the work to a private conservation room inside De Luca Holdings, a place so clean and controlled it could have belonged to a museum if not for the 2 armed men outside. Nora set down her equipment and pointed at the check. Remove it. Matteo stood beside the window, with coffee in one hand. It is not touching the paper. It is inside my work area. You dislike reminders. I dislike props. He opened the case, removed the check, and placed it on a distant shelf without argument. That bothered her more than resistance would have. Before I touch the ledger, we write terms. Matteo nodded toward a folder. Already drafted. Nora did not open it. My terms, not yours. Something like amusement crossed his face. Go on. I keep copies of every translation. I decide when the object is too fragile to handle. Nobody removes a page. Nobody photographs my notes without permission. I leave whenever I choose. Matteo's gaze rested on her. And if leaving puts you in danger, you tell me the danger. I decide whether I leave. Matteo set down his coffee. One condition from me. You do not conceal anything the ledger says about my family. Nora thought of the broken circle and the chemical smell. If I can verify a translation, you get it. That is carefully worded. Careful wording is what contracts are for. He signed the amended page she wrote by hand. Nora signed beneath him. Only then did she unlock her tool case. Matteo watched her place a thin support beneath the ledger's front cover. My father received a package 7 days before he died. He said, same smell, resin and clove. I remember because my mother complained it stayed in his office. Nora kept her eyes on the binding. What was inside, I never saw it. Who did my father? Vittorio. Possibly one secretary who died 2 years later. Nora looked up. Convenient. Matteo's expression did not change. You said that word last night. Your family inspires repetition. He almost smiled. My father was shot, leaving a restaurant. The official explanation was a rival crew, and you do not believe it. I believe explanations that survive questions. Nora began with the page edges. Under magnification, one corner had been cut by hand rather than damaged by age. The angle was small, almost meaningless. Her foster father, Elias Vale, used to cut practice pages exactly that way when she was a teenager. He said a reader should know which page belonged to which sequence, even if someone reordered the book. Nora's throat tightened. Matteo noticed. You recognize it. I recognize a technique. From the dead person who taught you. Nora placed the lens down. His name was Elias Vale. Matteo's stillness told her he had heard the name before. What she asked? Nothing. That was not nothing. He had used the same words on her last night. Nora waited. Matteo walked to the other side of the table. I had my people check your professional history. Anger arrived clean and immediate. You investigated me after signing a contract about trust. We signed it 4 minutes ago. That is your defense. No. It is chronology. Nora removed her gloves. Then here is more chronology. You asked me to return. I agreed. You could have asked me about Elias. Matteo did not apologize. Would you have answered maybe? That is not reassuring. Neither are armed men outside the door. He glanced toward the hall. They are there because the first line accused my second-in-command of betrayal. They are also there because you are accustomed to solving uncertainty with control. Matteo's eyes narrowed. Nora closed the ledger. If you searched Elias, tell me what you found. Almost nothing. No university record matching his language work. No publications. No government employment. Before he became your foster guardian, he appears in records under 3 slightly different versions of his name. Nora's anger thinned into unease. That does not make sense. It does, if Elias Vale was not his first name. She stared at him. You think he was connected to this ledger? I think you smelled his work on a book that named my uncle. Nora wanted to leave. Instead, she reopened the ledger. That choice irritated her because she could not tell whether it came from courage or fear of what she might learn elsewhere. We read the book, she said. We do not turn Elias into a theory until the paper supports it. Matteo nodded. Agreed. They worked through the first page for nearly an hour. Nora translated fragments rather than sentences. Dates, shipping quantities, initials. A phrase that could mean protected cargo or protected person, depending on direction. Matteo asked questions without interrupting her hands. when she changed reading direction halfway through a line. He caught it. Why, Nora pointed to a pair of dots. They reverse the sequence. You did not reverse it there, because that dot is square. Matteo leaned closer. That is a difference. In this system, yes. Who invents a language where punctuation changes direction? Nora's mouth tightened. Someone who does not want strangers reading it. Effective. Annoying. Also effective. The first complete location appeared shortly before noon. Nora sounded out the encoded name twice before writing it in English. Pier 47. Red Hook. Matteo's posture changed. It was subtle, but she had spent her career noticing changes smaller than that. You know it. My family leased warehouses there 20 years ago. Past tense, most were sold. Nora looked at the next symbol. This entry is dated 13 years ago. Matteo reached for his phone. Nora caught his wrist before she thought better of it. Both of them froze. His skin was warm beneath her fingers. The guards outside remained invisible. But Nora suddenly remembered exactly whose wrist she was holding. She released him. No calls until I finished the line. Matteo looked at the place she had touched. Then, at hair. Professional rule. New one. He put the phone down. Continue. Nora hated the small pulse of relief that followed his obedience. The line ended with a name. Not De Luca. Not Matteo. V. Caro. Nora head. Matteo's eyes sharpened. Caro. That is the closest phonetic rendering. The door opened before either could continue. Vittorio entered without knocking. I was told she found a location. Nora looked at Matteo, who told him. Matteo's expression cooled. Not me. Vittorio approached the table. Red Hook. Nora did not answer. His gaze fell on her notes. Pier 47. The words came from him before he could stop them. Nora felt the room lock into place. Matteo's voice became very quiet. She did not say the pier number. Vittorio's face did not change quickly enough. I saw it on the page. Nora turned the ledger toward herself. The number was encoded. You cannot read the page. Vittorio looked at her. Perhaps you are not the only one with experts. Matteo stood between Vittorio and the table. Who told you? You are interrogating me because a conservator invented a translation. No. I am asking how you knew a number she had not spoken. Vittorio's jaw flexed. Your father used that pier. Nora saw Matteo absorb the answer. For what business? What business? The kind you were too young to understand. Matteo's voice stayed level. Try me now. Vittorio glanced at Nora. Not in front of her. Nora began closing her notebook. That works for me. Matteo put one hand on the table. Not touching her. Stay. She looked at him. You do not get to order that. A beat passed. Please stay. Vittorio's expression turned incredulous. Nora almost enjoyed that. She sat back down. Vittorio paced toward the window. Pier 47 was used for private shipments. Cash. Art. Documents. Nothing unusual for that period. Nora pointed to the ledger. Then why hide it in a cipher? Because men, like my brother, enjoyed secrets. Matteo's gaze hardened. My father hated unnecessary complexity. Your father hated being questioned. Vittorio turned toward Nora. You should take the money and leave while this is still amusing. Nora felt the warning beneath the sentence. Matteo did too. Do not threaten her. I am advising her. Then advise someone who asked. Vittorio looked at his nephew for a long moment. You think a stranger with a convenient skill is safer than blood. Matteo answered without hesitation. Today, she has lied to me once. I stopped counting yours years ago. Vittorio's face went blank. He left without another word. Nora waited until the door closed. You should not have done that. Matteo looked at her. Defended you. Made me part of an argument with him. He already made you part of it. Then do not make it worse. Matteo's jaw tightened. He threatened you. And you answered by claiming me as your side. I did not claim you. You contrasted me with blood. Nora pushed back from the table. This is what I mean. You turn people into positions. Matteo was silent. Nora gathered her notes. I am taking lunch. Nora, contract says I can leave. I know. She paused. He continued. There is a car downstairs if you want it. I do not. Then it will remain downstairs. She almost accused him of control again, but stopped. He had offered, not ordered. The difference was small. It was still a difference. When Nora returned 40 minutes later, Matteo was alone. The guards had moved farther down the corridor. Her copies sat exactly where she had left them. The ledger remained closed. Nobody had touched it. Nora set her bag down. You waited. You said nobody touches it without you. You could have ignored me. I could do many stupid things. Nora looked at him. Was that an apology? Do not become ambitious. She laughed before she could stop herself. Matteo, started. What she asked? Nothing. That was not nothing. I had not heard you laugh. The air changed in a way Nora did not like because she liked it too much. She put on her gloves. You still have not. Of course. His mouth almost curved. They reached the third page near sunset. The cut corner appeared again. So did the broken circle. Nora mapped the marks onto tracing film. Each seemed decorative alone. Together, they formed a sequence. These are not corrections, she whispered. Matteo came beside her. What are they? Instructions. For reading, for finding something that was removed. She aligned the transparent sheet over the page. A series of marks pointed not to words, but to spaces where words should have been. Missing lines. Her foster father had made her solve exercises exactly like this. Never read only what they give you, he used to say. Read what someone worked hardest to erase. Nora's hands began to tremble. Matteo saw it and stepped back rather than closer. Tell me what you need. The question surprised her. Not what does it say. Not, give it to me. 5 minutes, she said, and no one in the room. Matteo nodded. He reached the door before Nora spoke. Except you. Matteo turned. She did not know why she had said it. Maybe because the ledger had become a bridge to Elias and she did not want to cross it entirely alone. Maybe because Matteo had moved the guards when she asked without being asked. Stay, she said, but do not talk. He returned to the far side of the table. Nora traced the missing spaces. 4 marks. 4 absent words. She reconstructed the first from surrounding grammar. Black. The second was ink. The third was a verb that could mean remembers or keeps. The fourth was a name. She stared at the damaged strokes until the room blurred. What Matteo asked. Breaking the rule. Because her face must have answered first. Nora swallowed. The hidden instruction says, black ink remembers veil. Matteo went completely still. Nora looked down at the cut edge her foster father had taught her to recognize. Elias had not merely known the system. Someone who wrote this ledger had known his name. Before she could say more, Matteo's phone vibrated. He read the message once. Pier 47 was never sold. He said, What? The property records were falsified. A shell company has held it for 12 years. Nora's stomach tightened. Whose company? Matteo turned the screen toward her. The registered director was Vittorio De Luca. Nora did not sleep. At 3:17 in the morning, she was sitting on the floor of her apartment with photocopies spread around her like pieces of a body no one had admitted was dead. Black ink remembers veil. The phrase repeated in her head until it stopped sounding like language. Elias had taught her never to trust repetition unless she understood what changed around it. So Nora stopped reading the words and studied the empty spaces. On page 1, A missing stroke sat beneath the warning about Matteo. Page 2 hid a gap beside Pier 47. Page 3 carried the veil instruction. Each absence had the same width, the same cut at the edge, the same faint residue where ink had been removed. She overlaid her tracing sheets and felt her stomach drop. The missing pieces were not separate corrections. They were coordinates. Someone had built a second text by erasing one line from every page. At 8, Nora entered DeLuca Holdings carrying 3 folders and an anger she had not yet decided where to place. Matteo was already in the conservation room. The $1 million check was gone. "Where is it?" she asked. "The check? Yes. You told me it was a prop." "I did. So, I removed the prop." Nora set down her folders. "That was almost reasonable. I have difficult mornings." His eyes moved over her face. "You did not sleep. Neither did you. I am better at looking expensive while tired." Against her will, her mouth twitched. Then she opened the first folder. The missing marks form coordinates. Matteo's humor disappeared. For what a second message. She laid the tracing sheets across the table. Every page has a line someone removed. Not damaged. Removed. Elias taught me this exact method. Matteo studied the overlays. Can you reconstruct it? Eventually. How long? If nobody interrupts me. Hours. Then nobody interrupts you. For the next 2 hours. Matteo kept his word. Nora worked through the ledger while he sat at the far end of the room, answering messages without taking calls. The silence was unexpectedly easy. She reconstructed fragments. Names without surnames. Dates. A sequence of port codes. Then a sentence emerged from the missing text. The first account is false. Nora wrote it down. The next missing line gave her, "Follow the black ink." Not the names. Her pulse accelerated. Matteo. He crossed the room. Nora showed him the page. Someone expected the visible ledger to be found. A decoy. Not entirely. More like contaminated evidence. She pointed to the main text. Some entries may be true. Others may have been inserted. Can you tell which? The second layer may tell us. Matteo stared at the words. And Elias knew. It looks that way. Nora swallowed, which means he may have helped create it. Matteo's phone vibrated. He read the screen, then turned it, face down. Nora noticed. What? Nothing that helps the translation. That answer usually means something terrible. Vittorio called a family meeting for noon. About the pier. About me allowing a stranger access to internal material. Nora looked at him. He means me? Yes. And Matteo's jaw tightened. He wants the ledger removed from this room. Nora closed her notebook. Then we move it somewhere he cannot reach. You say that as if you know my family. I know documents. If someone wants the original immediately after learning you found a hidden layer, the original stays away from them. Matteo considered her for one beat. Agreed. Nora frowned. You really need to stop making agreements surprising. You really need to stop expecting me to be stupid. I expect you to be controlling. That is more defensible. The interruption came anyway. At 11:20. 2 DeLuca attorneys entered with a written order from the family trust, asserting joint ownership of the ledger. Nora refused to release it. Matteo refused more elegantly. The argument lasted 12 minutes. One attorney finally said, Mr. DeLuca, your uncle has the votes to suspend your sole control over disputed family assets. Matteo's expression did not change. Then he should use them. Nora looked at him after the lawyers left. Can he? Possibly. You did not mention that. You asked whether he could take the ledger now. He cannot. And at noon, that depends. Nora stared at him. This is exactly the kind of answer that makes people throw objects. Please avoid the ledger. She almost laughed, then saw he was serious. Go to your meeting. I am not leaving you here alone. You have guards. That is not the same thing. It is if the danger is someone walking through a door. Matteo's eyes held hers. You think that is the only danger? Nora understood a second too late. You still think I might be involved? He did not answer. The silence felt different now. Say it. Matteo walked toward the table. The hidden message names Vale. The only person who can read it is Vale's foster daughter. You appeared at the auction through a contractor hired 48 hours earlier. Because your original conservator got influenza, according to an email sent from an account that no longer exists. Nora's skin went cold. What? My people checked this morning. You investigated the contractor too. Yes, of course you did. Matteo continued. The substitution request came from a temporary account. The phone number attached to it was prepaid. Nora stared at him. You think someone arranged for me to be there? I think someone may have. And you think that someone could be me? I do not know. The answer cut deeper, because it was honest. Nora took off her gloves. Then you should not leave me with the ledger. Matteo's expression tightened. Nora, no. Your logic is sound. I know a private code. My foster father is named inside the hidden layer. My arrival was manipulated. If I were you, I would suspect me too. She closed the conservation case. But I am not going to work while you pretend trust exists where it does not. I never pretended. Exactly. Nora gathered her copies. Matteo moved toward the door before she reached it. He did not block her. Instead, he entered a code into the wall panel. The ledger case locked with a mechanical click. Nora stopped. What did you just do? Restricted access until I know who arranged your substitution. You locked me out. From the original. You keep your copies. Our contract says I control access while I am conserving it. Our contract did not anticipate evidence that you were deliberately placed in the room. Nora felt heat rise beneath her skin. So this is your answer. A test. A precaution. Same thing with better tailoring. Matteo's face hardened. If I believed you were guilty, you would not be walking out. The sentence silenced her for the wrong reason. There it was. The world beneath his manners. Nora stepped closer. Do you hear yourself? Matteo's jaw flexed. Yes. Good. Then, hear this too. You do not get credit for giving me freedoms that already belong to me. Something shifted in his eyes. Nora lifted her folders. Find out who sent me to that auction. Until then, translate your own book. She walked out. By late afternoon, the first consequences arrived. A financial news alert reported unusual movements around Luca-controlled shipping assets. An hour later, 2 long-standing business partners suspended transactions. Nora sat in a public library reading the article on her phone and knew the timing was not accidental. Someone was using the ledger's visible entries before Nora could verify them. Her phone rang. Matteo. She ignored it. He called again. On the 3rd attempt, she answered. What? Did you send any translation to anyone? No. Did you photograph the Red Hook page? No. Someone has circulated a translation claiming I authorized a transfer against the Belandi family. Nora stood. What wording? Matteo read it. She closed her eyes. That is wrong. How wrong? The visible line can be read that way if you ignore the reversal mark. Could one of the experts from the auction make that mistake? Yes. Nora thought of Vittorio saying he had other experts. But whoever translated it had access to a clear image. Matteo was silent. The ledger has not left the locked room. Nora's anger cooled into concentration. Then someone photographed it before you locked it. Or before the auction. Vittorio knew the peer number. Yes. Nora grabbed her folders. The false translation is not meant to convince experts. It is meant to provoke the Belandis before anyone can correct it. Where are you? That is not relevant. Nora, do not turn concern into an order. A Pause. Where would you prefer to meet? The correction was so immediate, she almost missed it. Nora looked at the library windows. My restoration studio. 40 minutes. Come alone. That is a bad security decision. Then stay home. Matteo exhaled. 40 minutes. He arrived in 38. Alone, as promised. Nora's studio occupied the second floor above a framing shop and contained more books than chairs. Matteo looked enormous inside it. Nora spread her copies across a workbench. The Belandi line is on page 6. I copied enough of it yesterday. You said you had only reached page 3. I photographed condition details on every page before translation. Matteo looked at her. Professional procedure. Useful profession. Occasionally. She magnified the copied image. Here. This mark reverses the subject and object. Without it, the line, says De Luca, sends the marked cargo against Belandi. With it, the line says, Belandi cargo was redirected under De Luca protection. Matteo's expression darkened. Someone removed the mark from the circulated image. Exactly. Nora placed a tracing overlay over the page. The missing line coordinates pointed to the same sentence. She reconstructed 2 words, then stopped. This is not only correcting the visible text. What does it say? It says, false hand changes direction. Matteo leaned closer, meaning someone altered reversal marks throughout the ledger. She looked at him. If Vittorio has a copy without those marks, he can manufacture whatever translations he needs. Matteo's phone rang. He silenced it. The Belandis have requested a meeting tonight. Requested. That is the polite word. Nora returned to the overlay. Then we need the rest of the missing line before you go. We. She looked at him. Do not make it sentimental. I dislike being framed almost as much as you dislike being shot. For 2 hours they reconstructed fragments from Nora's copies, without the original. Several strokes remained uncertain. Matteo did not rush her. He did not ask whether she had forgiven him. At one point he brought coffee from downstairs and placed it beside her without comment. Nora drank it. That was as close to peace as either offered. The hidden message gradually formed. False hand changes direction. Trust the missing line. The name beside the harbor is not the hand that wrote it. Nora stared at the sentence. The visible ledger is designed to implicate people whose names appear beside transactions, including me, probably, and Vittorio, maybe him too. Matteo's eyes narrowed. You think the warning on the first page could be manipulated? I think Elias is telling us not to trust names without the missing layer. She saw the implication hit him. The first line that accused Vittorio might itself be bait. Matteo's phone vibrated again. This time, he answered. He listened for 10 seconds, then said, Do nothing until I arrive. Nora watched his face change. What happened? He ended the call. The Belandis intercepted one of my trucks. Was anyone hurt? Not yet. Matteo picked up his coat. Nora looked at the copies. If you walk into that meeting with the visible translation, Vittorio wins. If I do not walk into it, the Belandis assume the translation is true. Then take me. Matteo went still. No. Nora almost smiled without humor. There he is. This is not a conference room. I know. You are not going into a meeting between families because you can explain punctuation. That punctuation is why the meeting exists. Matteo stepped closer. And if they decide you created the false translation, then I show them how it was altered. No. Nora folded her arms. A price is not a choice. Matteo, neither is protection when you refuse to let the other person decide. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he took out his phone. There will be security. Fine. You stay beside me. I stay where I can see the document. Nora. That is my condition. His mouth tightened. Agreed. She gathered the overlays. Matteo reached for one, then stopped before touching it. Nora handed it to him herself. As she closed the folder, a final copied image slipped onto the floor. Page 9. Nora bent to retrieve it and saw the cut corner. Not one cut. Two. She froze. Elias had taught her that double cuts meant the sequence was deliberately out of order. Nora laid pages 8, 9, and 10 beside each other. The missing line coordinates changed when she reordered them. New words emerged. Matteo watched her face. What Nora traced the phrase once, hoping she was wrong. The hidden message is not just warning us about altered names. Then what is it? She looked up. It says the reader was expected. Matteo became completely still. Nora's mouth went dry as she translated the next fragment. When Vale's child reads this, the door is already open. The Belandi meeting lasted 11 minutes before Nora understood that nobody had invited them there to negotiate. The warehouse in Red Hook was nearly empty. Its concrete floor, marked by old freight lines and rain, tracked in from the river. Matteo stood beside her, not in front of her. He had kept that promise without being asked. Across a steel table sat Carlo Belandi and 3 men whose attention never left Matteo's hands. A printed photograph of page 6 lay between them. The reversal mark had been removed, exactly as Nora predicted. Carlo tapped the false translation. My son was driving the truck your people intercepted 13 years ago. Matteo's voice stayed even. And my father was still alive 13 years ago. Convenient. Not for him. Carlo's mouth hardened. Nora opened her folder. The translation is wrong. Every man at the table looked at her. Carlo barely concealed his contempt. You are the $1 million girl. Nora disliked the name immediately. I did not take the money. That is supposed to make you credible. No. The ink is... She placed her enlargement beside the circulated image. This square mark reverses the grammatical direction. Whoever prepared your copy removed it. Carlo leaned forward. And I should trust your version. You should trust magnification. Nora handed him a lens. One of his men examined both images, then whispered something in Italian. Carlo's expression changed by a fraction. Nora continued. The hidden layer also warns that the visible names were altered. Matteo looked at her but said nothing. Carlo did. Hidden layer. Nora realized too late how much she had exposed. A second reading system. Who can read it? The warehouse seemed to contract. Nora answered carefully. I can. Carlo sat back. Then you are more valuable than the book. Matteo's shoulders became still. Nora felt the old instinct rise, disappear. Soften. Make herself smaller. She refused it. No. I am a conservator with a specific skill. Do not turn that into ownership. Carlo laughed once. She speaks to you like this too, Matteo looked at Nora. Usually worse. It was the wrong moment to be funny. It helped anyway. Carlo finally pushed the false photograph away. I will hold my people until tomorrow night. After that, I want proof of who changed the page. Matteo nodded. You will have it. Outside. Rain struck the warehouse roof. Nora waited until they were inside Matteo's car before speaking. You promised proof we do not have. We have a day. That is not proof. It is time. You buy everything in units. Do you not? Matteo glanced at her. Not everything. The answer hung between them. Nora looked out the window. The message said the door was already open when Vale's child reads it, meaning someone arranged your presence. Or Elias did. From the grave. He taught me the system. He may have built a trigger into the ledger knowing someone would eventually look for a reader. Matteo's phone vibrated. He ignored it. Nora turned back. I need the original. The family trust has frozen access. Then unfreeze it. That would require either Vittorio's vote or moving the ledger in violation of the trust order. Nora stared at him. Which illegal option are you considering? I appreciate your confidence in me. Matteo did not steal the ledger. He did something Nora found more surprising. He called the trust's independent counsel and requested a supervised examination with representatives from both sides present. By midnight, Nora was back in the conservation room with Matteo, Vittorio, 2 attorneys, and a camera recording every movement. Vittorio looked at her as if the Belandi meeting had personally offended him. You have 1 hour. Nora put on her gloves. Paper does not care about your schedule. You seem to enjoy saying things like that, only when they remain true. Matteo looked down to hide a smile. Nora began with pages 8 through 10. The double cuts proved the sequence had been rearranged. When she placed page 10 before page 9, the missing coordinates aligned. The hidden sentence continued. When Vale's child reads this, the door is already open. Look beneath the hand that corrected mine. Nora stopped. Corrected mine. Matteo moved closer. Elias wrote the hidden layer. Or whoever wrote it wanted me to think he did. She inspected the black corrections. Under oblique light. The altered reversal marks shone differently. I need solvent testing. Vittorio objected immediately. No chemicals. Nora looked at him. A microscopic test on a detached fiber from the binding repair. No, one attorney said. Ms. Vale is the conservator of record. Vittorio's jaw tightened. Do it. The fiber gave Nora the answer within minutes. The original ink contained lamp black and aged resin. The corrections contained a synthetic polymer unavailable when the earliest entries were written. The alterations are newer, she said. How new? Matteo asked. I can narrow it further with laboratory analysis, but not tonight. Vittorio folded his arms. So you have proved someone restored an old book. Nora looked at the altered mark. No, restoration ink would stabilize damage. This changes meaning. She moved to page 12. Another double cut. Another missing fragment. Look beneath the hand. She studied the visible entries and suddenly understood the instruction literally. Matteo, I need the ultraviolet lamp. Under ultraviolet light, the page transformed. The old resin fluoresced weakly. The newer corrections remained dark. But beneath one correction was a third mark, almost invisible in ordinary light. A tiny vertical stroke crossing the altered symbol. Nora's breath caught. Elias used that stroke when teaching her. It meant false hand. She checked the next corrected symbol. Same stroke. The next. Same. He marked the alterations. Elias Matteo asked. Yes. Nora's voice shook. He knew someone would change the ledger after him. Or he anticipated it. Vittorio scoffed. That is speculation. Nora turned the lamp toward the page edge. A sequence of tiny strokes appeared where the paper had been trimmed. Not letters. Numbers. Dates. The first date was 18 years old. The second 17. The third was the year Matteo's father died. Nora followed the sequence to a page near the back. Her fingers went cold. The hidden line there was longer than the others and had not been completely erased. She read silently once. Then again. Matteo watched her. Nora. She looked at him. It names your father. Vittorio stepped forward. Read it. Nora did not. Read it. He repeated. The echo of Matteo's $1 million challenge struck her so sharply that for a moment the room became the auction salon again. Except nobody was laughing now. Nora had. Lorenzo De Luca received the first copy. He refused the harbor agreement. He asked Vale to preserve the second. Matteo's face emptied. Vittorio said, That proves nothing. Nora continued. If Lorenzo dies, do not trust the visible account. The correction hand belongs to the man who inherits the harbor. Silence. Matteo looked toward Vittorio. You inherited Pier 47. Vittorio's expression hardened, along with dozens of useless assets, through a shell company. For tax reasons. Nora kept reading the hidden strokes. There is more. Her throat tightened around the next words. Vale will remove the reader from the network. The child must never know what she carries. Nora could no longer feel the gloves against her hands. The child, not a metaphor. Elias had not taught her an eccentric code because he loved puzzles. He had taught her because he was afraid the knowledge might otherwise die, then spent the rest of his life trying to make sure she never needed it. Matteo said her name quietly. Nora shook her head. Do not. She needed the page. Not comfort. There is another line. The final fragment was written in the narrowest margin. She adjusted the lamp. I changed the key after Lorenzo refused. Vittorio cannot read the second hand. If he finds this book, he will alter what he understands and expose himself in what he does not. Vittorio moved before anyone else. His hand came down toward the ledger. Matteo caught his wrist above the page. The attorneys shouted. One guard entered. Nora pulled the book toward herself and covered it with the protective sheet. Vittorio stared at Matteo. Let go. Matteo did. Slowly. You knew the pier, he said, because I owned it. You knew the ledger was dangerous, because my brother died over it. Matteo's eyes changed. You told me a rival crew killed him. They pulled the trigger. Who gave them his route? Vittorio said nothing. The silence was answer enough for Matteo, but not for Nora. No, she said. Both men looked at her. We do not replace evidence with a reaction. Matteo's jaw tightened. Nora, you told me you believe explanations that survive questions. Ask questions. She turned to Vittorio. The ledger says the correction hand belongs to the man who inherits the harbor. That points to you. It does not prove you ordered Lorenzo's death. Vittorio looked almost grateful until Nora continued. But if you altered the reversal marks, your ink should match the ink on documents you controlled at Pier 47. Matteo understood immediately. The shell company's archives. Vittorio's face changed. There. Not guilt proven, but fear exposed. He turned to the attorneys. This examination is over. Nora closed the ledger before anyone could touch it. Fine. I have what I need. Vittorio left with one attorney behind him. Matteo waited until the door shut. You stopped me from accusing him. I stopped you from giving him a warning before we had proof. I already gave him one. Then we move faster. Matteo looked at her for a long moment. You are shaking. Nora removed her gloves. Her hands were trembling badly now. Elias lied to me my entire childhood. He protected you. She looked up sharply. Matteo corrected himself. He believed he was protecting you. The distinction broke something open in her chest. Thank you. He did not approach. For what? For learning. Bedaven. Matteo's investigators had obtained lawful copies of archived corporate records from the company that managed Pier 47. Nora compared high-resolution scans of signatures, correction marks, and handwritten shipping notes. One purchasing ledger from 12 years earlier contained the same synthetic black ink and the same peculiar pressure pattern as the altered reversal marks. The handwriting belonged to Vittorio's longtime accountant, Marco Santi. Matteo leaned over the desk, so Vittorio did not make the corrections himself. No, which is better evidence? Not worse. Santi signed the procurement logs. Can we connect him to the altered ledger? Nora pointed to a tiny hook at the end of each correction. Same hand habit. A document examiner can confirm independently. Matteo picked up his phone. Santi disappeared 6 months ago. Nora looked at him. Disappeared, retired. According to Vittorio. His accounts stopped moving 3 days later. Dead, I do not know. Nora returned to the ultraviolet photographs. One hidden line remained unresolved. It sat beside a series of initials she had assumed were shipping codes. Now she recognized them as a substitution alphabet Elias had taught her when she was 10. She decoded slowly. M.S. keeps the original hand. Marco Santi, she whispered. Matteo turned. What Elias says. Santi kept the original hand, meaning an unaltered copy. Maybe. Nora checked the next symbols. At the harbor, Matteo was already reaching for his coat. Nora stood. I am coming. Nora. He stopped himself. She waited. Matteo exhaled. Do you want to come? Yes. Then you come. Pier 47 looked abandoned from the street. Inside the oldest warehouse, they found no ledger. They found a conservation cabinet bolted beneath a workbench. Matteo's men opened the outer lock, while Nora handled the sealed interior box. The smell hit her before the lid was fully raised. Pineresin. Lamp black. Clove oil. Inside lay a stack of loose pages wrapped in linen and a photograph of Elias standing beside Lorenzo de Luca. Nora sat down hard on the nearest crate. On the back, Elias had written in ordinary English, Lorenzo shows to stop it. If he dies, I take the child and disappear. If I die first, she will know how to read what we could not safely say. Nora pressed her thumb against the edge of the photograph. Matteo stood several feet away, giving her space even while every instinct in him probably demanded answers. He knew your father, she said. Yes, he was part of this. Yes. Nora turned over the first loose page. Unlike the auction ledger, none of the reversal marks had been altered. The original hand. She compared the first sentence and felt the final structure click into place. The warning had never said the man who sold Matteo's name was seated on his left. Matteo saw her expression. What does it actually say? Nora looked at the photograph, then at the unaltered line. The man seated on Matteo de Luca's left will make him believe his name was sold. Matteo went still. Nora continued reading. His purpose is not to kill the heir. She reached the final phrase. It is to make the heir start a war. Vittorio chose the same private salon where Nora had first read the ledger. The symmetry was deliberate. The $1 million check sat beneath the lamp, exactly where Matteo had placed it on the first night. Around the table were Carlo Bellundi, 2 De Luca attorneys, 3 senior family representatives, and an independent document examiner. Nobody laughed when Nora entered. Vittorio leaned back in his chair. Read it again. Nora set the linen-wrapped original pages on the table. Which part? The part where you save Matteo from every accusation. Matteo stood beside the window. Silent. Vittorio smiled. You see the problem. A woman appears from nowhere, claims exclusive knowledge of a private code, then discovers evidence that conveniently clears the man paying her. Nora looked at the check. He never paid me. You expect that to help? No. I expect the paper to help. She opened the first original page. You called everyone here because you think my translation cannot survive examination. Good. Let us examine it. Nora began with the first altered warning. She placed the auction copy beside the original page recovered from Pier 47. The visible copy says the man seated on Matteo's left sold his name. The original does not. Carlo Bellundi leaned forward. Nora pointed to the missing reversal mark. Restore this square. And the subject changes. She read the complete sentence. The man seated on Matteo de Luca's left will make him believe his name was sold. Vittorio's mouth tightened. Nora continued through the next entries, showing each reversal, each cut edge, each hidden instruction. She did not ask the room to believe her. She handed the magnifier to the independent examiner and waited while he reproduced the reading. Un by un, the altered translations fell apart. The Belandi shipment had been redirected for protection, not attack. The port records had been changed after Lorenzo De Luca refused the harbor agreement. Marco Santi's correction hand appeared wherever the visible ledger pushed two families toward conflict. Then Nora reached the page that mattered most. Half of it was gone. Her breath stopped. The page had been complete at Pier 47. Now only the upper section remained inside the linen wrapper. Matteo moved first. Who handled the evidence? Vittorio smiled. Careful. Matteo looked toward the doors. Nora knew what came next if she let it happen. Locked exits. Searched pockets. Power replacing proof. Matteo. He looked at her. Do not. His jaw tightened. A page is missing. I can see that. Someone in this room may have taken it. Then we prove what the missing page said, without trapping anyone in the room. Vittorio laughed softly. You cannot. Nora looked at the torn edge. For one terrible second. She thought he was right. The missing section contained the line connecting Vittorio to the manipulated route information surrounding Lorenzo's death. Without it, the case remained strong, but incomplete. Vittorio could still claim Santi had acted alone. Nora closed her eyes. Elias had never taught her to memorize pages. He had taught her structure. Read what someone worked hardest to erase. She opened her eyes. I need pages 7 and 9. Matteo brought them to her without asking why. Nora placed the damaged page between them. The hidden layer is chained. The closing pattern on one page determines the opening structure on the next. A missing section leaves grammatical limits. The independent examiner frowned. Limits are not words. Correct. Vittorio leaned back. Then this is finished. No. Nora took a sheet of tracing film. I cannot recover every word. I can recover what kind of word belongs in each position. She marked 4 spaces. This position is a person. This is an action. This is a location. This is a date. Carlo Belandi asked, Can you identify them? 3. Nora pointed to the paired symbol ending the prior line. The person key matches the Vittorio marker, used twice elsewhere. She pointed to the first symbol on page 9. The location continues the harbor sequence. Then she indicated the date code. This is the week Lorenzo De Luca was killed. Vittorio's expression did not change. And the action? He asked. Nora looked at the empty space. That is the part I cannot prove from the original page. A small smile appeared on Vittorio's face. Then you have nothing. Nora's stomach dropped. This was the failure she had feared. She had evidence. She had structure. She did not have the verb. Matteo did not step in. He did not accuse Vittorio. He did not tell Nora to stop. He only stood where she could see him. The choice remained hers. Nora looked at the auction ledger. Black ink. The altered copy. Her pulse changed. The correction hand filled the missing verb. Vittorio's smile disappeared. Nora pulled the auction ledger closer. Santi altered the same sentence in the visible copy. He removed a reversal marker and inserted a phrase blaming the rival crew. Carlo Belandi looked at the page. If the marker is restored, the direction reverses. Nora drew the missing square on the tracing film. She read the visible version first. Vittorio received Lorenzo's route from the rival crew. Then she restored the grammar. Vittorio gave Lorenzo's route to the rival crew. The room went still. Vittorio stood. That is interpretation. No. Nora pushed the tracing film toward the examiner. Reproduce it. He did. Slowly. Silently. Then he looked up. Her construction is consistent. Vittorio's face hardened. Consistent is not proof that I ordered Lorenzo's death. Nora met his eyes. I agree. The room shifted. Vittorio had expected accusation. Matteo had too. Nora continued. The ledger proves you supplied the route. The financial records show your harbor company paid Marco Santi. The altered pages show Santi manufactured false messages designed to make Matteo and the Bellandis attack each other. She placed the Pier 47 records beside the ledger. What the evidence does not prove is who fired a weapon. I will not claim what the documents do not support. Carlo Belandi looked at Vittorio. She does not need to. Vittorio's eyes moved around the table. Nobody stood with him. He turned to Matteo. You would let a conservator dismantle your family in front of strangers. Matteo finally stepped away from the window. No. Vittorio's mouth curved. Matteo stopped beside Nora. I would let the truth dismantle what should never have been built. Vittorio's face changed. You think lawyers and audits will protect you? No. Then what will? Matteo looked at Nora before answering. Not starting the war you wanted. That was the blow Vittorio could not redirect. He had built everything around Matteo behaving predictably. Anger, retaliation, fear. Matteo gave him none of them. The De Luca attorneys placed the Pier 47 entities under immediate legal review. Carlo Belandi withdrew his retaliation order and requested copies of the verified translations. Vittorio protested, threatened litigation, then demanded the ledger be returned to family custody. Nora closed the case. No. Vittorio stared at her. The original goes into independent preservation until the investigation is complete. You do not own it. Neither do you. One attorney nodded. She is correct. Vittorio looked at Matteo one last time. You are giving away power. Matteo's voice stayed quiet. I am giving away your version of it. Vittorio left. No guards followed. No one dragged him back. His own strategy had failed because it depended on everyone else behaving exactly as he expected. By evening, the salon was empty. Nora stood at the table repacking her conservation tools. Matteo remained by the window. His tie loosened and his jacket over one arm. You lost several shipping contracts today. Nora said. Yes, Carlo told me. He enjoys reporting damage. And part of the family council. Also, yes. Nora looked at him. You are very calm. I am tired. That explains the honesty. Matteo crossed the room and picked up the $1 million check. Nora groaned. No, read it. She stared at him. You cannot possibly think this is charming. I am testing a theory. That sentence alone proves you learned nothing. He placed the check on the table. The payee line was blank. Nora looked down. What is this supposed to be? The first night, I thought the number proved how much your skill was worth to me. And now, I think putting a price on it was the mistake. Nora's hands went still. Matteo continued, I am not offering payment. Then why bring it back? Because you should decide what it means. The old Nora would have calculated rent, grants, medical insurance, and every year she had lived carefully enough to avoid needing anyone. The new Nora still understood the money. She simply understood something else more clearly. A price was not a choice. She picked up the check. Matteo watched her. Nora tore it in half. His eyebrows rose. She tore it again. That was a valid check. I know. You could have deposited it first. Less satisfying. A laugh escaped him. Not the controlled sound from the auction. A real laugh. Nora started. What? Nothing. That was not nothing. He smiled. You have heard me laugh now. Her chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Nora placed the torn pieces beside the closed ledger. I want something else. Matteo's expression changed. Name it. She pointed at him. Never say that beside a check again. Agreed. And dinner. He blinked. Nora almost smiled. Dinner. Somewhere without coded ledgers. Armored men. Family councils. Or anyone threatening war over punctuation. That eliminates several places I like. Matteo. Yes. I pay for myself. He opened his mouth. Nora lifted one finger. A price is not a choice. He closed it again. Fine. That sounded painful. It was. They reached the doorway together. Nora stopped. One more condition. Of course. If you want to know something about me, ask me. No investigation. Not unless I give you a reason. Matteo considered that. And if I think the truth could put you in danger, you tell me why, and then I choose. He nodded. Agreed. Nora looked back at the table. The torn check lay beside the ledger. On the first night, Matteo had believed money could buy the answer. Vittorio had believed fear could control the answer. Elias had believed silence could protect it. All three had been wrong in different ways. A price could buy obedience. Fear could buy silence. Power could force a door open. But truth only mattered when the person holding it was free to speak. Nora stepped into the hallway. Matteo walked beside her. This time, neither of them was following.